After 10 years, my wife finally agreed to do a cruise. But it took an adult-only cruise line, which we'd previously dismissed, and a bucket list itinerary to convince her, which included the culture and landmarks of Athens, the breathtaking views of Santorini, and the historic old town of Rhodes, before heading to the wonders of ancient Egypt, including the Great Pyramids and the Valley of the Kings, and ending with the modern skyline and opulence of cosmopolitan Dubai. Plus, we'll share our thoughts and misconceptions on Virgin Voyages, and not just the ones you're thinking of. But how did everyone not know about such an amazing itinerary, and how do you ensure you don't miss out again in the future? Now, we've been taking holidays in the Caribbean for over 2 decades in adult-only all-inclusives. And as we also like to explore outside the resort, it seemed only logical that we should try a cruise. So after many years, I finally persuaded the wife to try Virgin Voyages, especially as they target the cruise curious and that there would be no kids. However, she was not without her reservations, and I would never get her on a megaship. Now, some of these were general concerns, such as cabins would be pokey, which we're pleased to say was not the case, through to thinking that the ship would be too packed, though there were no long buffet line restaurants on this ship. However, the Virgin Voyages brand has not been without its misconceptions, and we had actually dismissed for some time, with criticisms about their single small pool, and a brand launch with influencers that portrayed a ship full of partying youngsters. However, compared to other cruise lines, their more comprehensive package inclusions were way more appealing. So with tips, Wi-Fi and basic beverages included, it was really only the bar tab to think about. And it was actually whilst filming our Sandals Grenada video series that a good friend recommended we should try Virgin Voyages. Now, with so many elements to the cruise and such an incredible itinerary, there is no way we could hope to cover everything in a single video. So these are just our key highlights, and please ask that you subscribe to follow our Resilient Lady series, as in the following episodes we will take a much more detailed look into Virgin Voyages brand, the cruise ship itself, and the incredible destinations we visited along the way. But aside from the bucket list itinerary of must-see ports, what drew us to Virgin Voyages? And the biggest selling point by far was the inclusion of the numerous a la carte restaurants, and these being offered as the main dining options as opposed to an upgrade and a supplement to a main dining room. And anyone who follows our channel knows this is a big priority for us whilst on vacation, with our standout favourites being the Wake, Extra Virgin and Pink Agave. Razzle Dazzle being more casual was our go-to for brunch, and although all the dining options were excellent, we were a little less taken with the experiential test kitchen or the group interactive dining of Gumbay. And if not too peckish, the small plates and setting of the dock were hard to beat. We were also pleasantly surprised by the galley, where the traditional cruise ship buffet has been upgraded to a food court, where items are cooked fresh to order and brought to your table instead. Now, another reason we chose Virgin Voyages was the standard of the cabin, with the vast majority of rooms being a sea terrace with a balcony without having to pay a significant upgrade, and of course with the legendary hammock. Another appealing factor was the atmosphere on board, and with the Virgin brand looking to shake up the stuffy image of cruising, you knew you were not going to be in for conventional entertainment with a resident drag queen. The Manor nightclub was the more intimate show venue, with late night dancing and more cabaret style performances that were more edgy and burlesque than the raunchy image that some people have portrayed. But with the main theatre called the Red Room, you know you're not going to get your traditional Broadway shows. But the ship has a talented and varied cast of performers, including acrobats and aerialists, who entertain with a contemporary alternative to the traditional cruise show. Now, how much audience participation you want to engage in is up to you, but we were fortunate enough to be on board during Halloween, where the ship went all out. Plus, no Virgin Voyage would be complete without the customary Scarlet Night, where everybody gets dressed up and gets involved. The highlight for us was the diverse range of musicians and live music across the ship. Not just On the Rocks, the main bar, but pop-up performances across the ship, adding to the chilled ambience of the cruise. And lastly, it was an informal, come-as-you-are attitude that resonated around the ship. Whether you wanted to dress up or down, didn't matter. If you wanted a party, there was a happenings cast that would entertain you, but it certainly wasn't the focus. But equally, if you wanted to just chill and do your own thing, there was plenty of scope to do that as well. But it is worth noting that the itinerary, ports of call and duration will impact the atmosphere on board. So compared to, say, a shorter Miami sailing, which would definitely be more upbeat, our demographic on board was of a significantly more mature age, with much fewer Brits and Americans and significantly more Australians. Now, this cruise really stood out on the Virgin Voyages website due to its incredible itinerary. However, it appeared to only be heavily promoted down under, hence why so many people miss this unique voyage. The 2-week itinerary was in fact the first of 3 legs as the ship was repositioning, as Resilient Lady, having finished her first summer in the Mediterranean, was then to travel from Athens to Dubai, then Dubai to Singapore, and the final leg from Singapore to Sydney, to then operate out of Australia for the winter season, hence why we had so many Aussies on board. The cruise was also a great mix of sea days plus excursions, including an overnight in Cairo, which as a huge bonus meant that the ship would pass through the Suez Canal. And although we were only doing the first 2-week leg, the ports of call were a true bucket list of top destinations, and the itinerary would allow us to trial many of them to see if we wanted to do them as a dedicated holiday sometime again in the future. And finally, we chose to extend at both the start and end in Athens and Dubai to make sure we had adequate time to see the sights and complete this as an incredible 18-night holiday. So we started our trip with a couple of extra nights in Athens prior to the cruise, where on the first night we explored the best rooftop restaurants and bars away from the tourist traps of Monastiraki Square, plus took in a characterful neighbourhood that many people miss just off the tourist trail. And an early start the next morning showed how you can beat the crowds at the Acropolis, and afterwards we explored the slopes, including the Acropolis Museum and both the ancient and Roman Agora, plus hunting down those must-have photo opportunities, and ended with dinner with a view at the highest point in the city centre, before leaving the next day for the short journey to Piraeus port to join our cruise ship Resilient Lady. So after the sail away party and our first night at sea, we woke the next morning to the stunning setting of Santorini. Now, with 7 cruise ships in that day, we knew the queue for the cable car at Port would be hours long. But thankfully had done our research and knew of a travel hack to take a boat cruise from Port all the way directly to Ia, beating the other cruise passengers here who had yet to do their coach transfers after the cable car wait. Now, although Ia and its famous blue domes are a must-see, fighting through bustling crowds can be tiring, so soon headed to a much quieter part of the island where you can get similar churches all to yourself. And away from the tourist hotspots of Ia and Thera and their busy restaurants, we had sought out this fantastic hotel prior, and although usually exclusive for just their guests, had got them to take a dinner reservation for us in an incredible setting with that fantastic Santorini sunset with no crowds. After which we had our next short overnight sail to the characterful old town of Rhodes. No need for formal excursions here, as everything was easily explorable by foot, starting in the old port on the site of the fabled Colossus of Rhodes, before heading into the historic old town, entering through one of the city's many gates and exploring the characterful streets, and most notably the Street of Knights, which leads up to the highlight of the city not to be missed, the Palace of the Grand Master of the Knights of Rhodes. And although taking in these key landmarks is a must-do, exploring on foot in the surrounding streets you'll find hidden gems such as the medieval clock tower with fantastic views out to the port and our cruise ship, which inspired us to take in a lunch spot with a view in this fantastically compact and easy to explore city. So next had a welcome sea day to recharge before a hectic couple of days in Cairo, where we had hired our own private tour guide and driver for no more than a cruise ship set excursion and allowed us to do our own bespoke itinerary, starting with the old town of Cairo and the original Egyptian Museum. And despite the uncertainty around the opening of the new Grand Egyptian Museum, we're still able to see the treasures of Tutankhamun, including the iconic death mask. And we were able to take advantage of an overnight stay at one of Cairo's best hotels on the banks of the Nile, which, aside from saving us the long transfer back to port, we could explore the hustle and bustle, the sights and sounds of Old Town Cairo, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and ending with a fantastic atmosphere of a rooftop restaurant at prayer time, before ending the evening with a nightcap at our hotel bar with fabulous views of the Nile at night. But most importantly, we could be up early and beat the crowds to the Giza Plateau and be some of the first to enter the Great Pyramid of Khufu. And although a little cramped at times and hot and sweaty, you simply cannot pass up on this opportunity. And you'll see the difference in our upcoming Cairo video how busy it got later, whilst we instead were off for breakfast with a view. And after which we could not leave without seeing the Great Sphinx of Giza before heading to Saqqara, which was considerably less hectic but however more historic, and home to the original step pyramid which predates Giza, and the site being less crowded and overrun with tourists meant you could be more hands-on with the history. But after a whirlwind tour of Cairo, it's time to head back to the ship and a sea day with a big difference. As rarely on a cruise would you get the opportunity of the view of travelling from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea through the Suez Canal. A truly unique and memorable experience, but also a relaxing day, very much needed before the next batch of sightseeing in Egypt. Docking in Safaga, this was the gateway to Luxor on our most hectic day of excursions. Now we really wish we could have had an overnight here because there was far too much to see in a single day. Again, we hired our own private guide and driver, which didn't go quite to plan, but we still managed to achieve way more than a set excursion. But we'll get into that in our Luxor video. But we started first with the breathtaking Temple of Karnak, which does not fail to impress. And after which we headed, of course, to the Valley of the Kings. And this is where having your own private Egyptologist really paid dividends, telling you which tombs to prioritise and which of the optional additional paid tombs are well worth doing. And, although quite modest in comparison, no visit to the Valley of the Kings would be complete without visiting the tomb of the boy king, Tutankhamun. Having seen his treasures on display in Cairo, you now get to witness the scene of the famous discovery and his mummified body at rest. Now, with the lengthy transfers from the port, this is the best you could hope to achieve in a single day on a normal excursion. Though by arranging our own private tour ourselves, meant we could take in another key iconic site, the Temple of Hatshepsut. And although a whirlwind few days, we'll definitely be back to experience more of Egypt. Now, the second part of the cruise was at a much more relaxed pace, with 5 long leisurely days at sea to recharge and fully embrace the cruising experience, before the hectic final leg arriving in Dubai. Now remember, we will be doing a separate video and deeper dive for every aspect of this incredible itinerary, so we please ask that you hit that like and subscribe buttons. It really goes a long way in helping support this channel and for us to bring you even more videos like this again in the future. But with one final night still on board whilst in this incredible port, we headed ashore to watch a fabulous sunset at JBR Beach. And after the sun had set, we took a short taxi ride to the exclusive Madinat Jumeirah. Set in the shadow of the Burj Al Arab, this characterful resort area has been styled on a traditional Arabian village, dotted with picturesque waterways that took us to an impressive waterfront Thai restaurant, but completing the experience by travelling there on Abras, the traditional water taxis throughout the resort. But all too soon it was time to head back to Resilient Lady for our final night before our disembarkation the next day. Though thankfully had extended 2 additional nights to see all of the highlights of Dubai. Starting first with a true birthday tree at the world's tallest 360-degree infinity pool. Now there is no shortage of impressive sky pools in Dubai, and this one is not even the tallest. However, being in the centre of the palm is the only one with a complete wraparound view of the entire skyline of Dubai. Though we did our research to ensure we picked the best location, which we felt had the best view and also the most sunshine. Plus could wave goodbye to Resilient Lady below us. And that evening we ventured further out into the palm to one of the more swanky and upscale resorts, which rather than stay at and blow our budget, which we could simply visit in the evening to appreciate its stunning architecture and a dinner reservation with an incredible view. And there are no shortage of other great venues on the palm to explore on a future visit. And for our last full day we headed to downtown Dubai, where again we sought out another hidden gem for a lunch reservation with a setting that was hard to beat. But given the fantastic view and delicious food, this is actually a complete bargain. So you'll need to watch our Dubai videos for us to tell you where this is. And if you don't like heights, well, you might need a few drinks for Dutch courage as we then headed to the observatory at the world's tallest building, where we booked the premium experience to see if it was worth paying the extra money to go an additional 20 floors higher. And at the aptly named, at the top, we could see the famous fountains of the Dubai Mall and the impressive setting of our restaurant for our finale dinner of the trip. With frontline seats to the projection show over the Burj Khalifa and the orchestrated fountains to music, and although a little indulgent, was the perfect way to end our incredible trip. Which brings to a close a truly memorable bucket list vacation that we could not recommend highly enough. And for our first cruise experience are definitely converted, though this is going to be a hard one to beat. But how is it this cruise went unnoticed and undocumented by everybody? Well, aside from only being actively marketed in certain countries, this unique itinerary only ran once. And our departure coincided with the beginning of hostilities in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. And shortly afterwards, the cruise ship stopped using the Red Sea due to attacks by Houthi rebels. But the million-dollar question is, will it return? Well, it is highly likely that the Red Sea will reopen to cruise traffic at some point in the foreseeable future. Plus, with Virgin's 4th ship, Brilliant Lady, on the way, there'll be pressure to look at other itineraries outside the Mediterranean and the Caribbean, and therefore a potential return to the Australian market. And if so, you'll need to keep your eyes open for this voyage or on an alternative cruise line, and be prepared to jump on booking it straight away, as these are likely to sell out after such a prolonged absence. So we hope you found this video both inspiring and informative, and hope that you'll subscribe to follow our complete Resilient Lady series, including all of our fabulous destinations. Or alternatively, watch one of our many other varied travel destinations. So for now, drop us a like and a comment, but thanks for watching and see you again soon.